Big East play is in full swing, and T. Baker is here to talk all things Big East, from what's happened so far to who's impressing on the court, UConn's freshmen, the Big East road trip, and what to expect as the season continues, and more.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Hello and happy Wednesday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm host Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. If this is your first time listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, we at The Next have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a beat reporter on every single WNBA team, one on more than 15 different NCAA beats, so get that YouTube subscription up. And you can also support us by subscribing to The Next, $9 a month, $72 a year at thenexthoops.com. Today, we'll be chatting all about what's happened so far in the Big East, who's impressing on the court, UConn's freshmen, Big East road trip, and what to expect as the season continues. Joining me today is The Next Big East writer, T. Baker. So T, starting off, how long have you been covering the Big East and how did you get started?
Hey, Natalie, thanks for having me on the podcast today. So I have had the opportunity to cover the Big East since the start of the 21-22 season. So just after the COVID season, and I'm in my third season now, and this will be my third Big East tournament coming up. So very excited to have been able to do this. I took over this role at The Next from Erica Ayala, who is doing some amazing work in women's sports as well, including women's hockey in particular. So very fortunate to be in my third year doing this work.
Awesome. And, getting to the Big East, what's a rundown of the standings in the Big East and who's been the most surprising or what's been the most surprising?
So in terms of where we're at right now with the standings, UConn is our number one team, and the top few teams that are kind of battling things out are expected. These were the predicted teams preseason. We're looking at Marquette, Creighton, Villanova, and St. John's kind of in those next tiers of the conference. I think that, what might be a surprise to some listeners is that St. John's has been really performing well. They were actually predicted to be 7th in the preseason poll, which was way lower than I expected. I think preseason polls, as we talked about last time on the pod, are always a bit of a hit or miss prediction because, there's a lot of new players. And in particular, Coach Joe Tartamella at St. John's brings in a lot of transfers each year, and he's been working a lot into the rotation. So they've been towards the top of the standings and really have been performing well. But right now in the Big East Conference, UConn's number one. And then there's 3 teams from the Big East that are in the AP poll in UConn, Marquette, and Creighton. So really competitive conference as always. And, we'll see how things shake out as the season goes on.
And, you mentioned St. John's. It started off the new year with wins over Marquette and Providence. But I want to talk about Unique Drake and Jillian Archer. What have they been able to bring to the team?
Yeah, those two are a really powerful 1-2 punch. I had the chance to go to Madison Square Garden and cover a game in December, one of the holiday tournaments where St. John's took on Villanova. And I was just really impressed with those two players. They were kind of expected to be St. John's, number 1 and 2, and Unique Drake was the 2023 Big East 6th Woman of the Year. So she's kind of picking up this year as a starter. She's averaging 18, almost 19 points a game and shooting, at 40% from 3. She, when she's hot on the court, can really just bring up the scoring and really just lifts the team on her back. After that game, Coach Tartamella really just said, it starts with Unique. She's the leader. And also said the same about Jillian Archer, who has transferred. She started at USC and then was over to Georgetown in the Big East, but she's been at St. John's for the past couple seasons and was a starter last season, the only returning starter. And she's averaging, 10.7 points a game, 7.1 rebounds per game. But beyond her stats, what she really brings is just a really powerful presence to the post. That game that she played against Villanova, she got a key block down the stretch, really was just locked in. And when you have a post player that's locked in, it really opens up things for you. And those two have been really impressive. But St. John's in general is an impressive team. They have a lot of new transfers that have come in this season. Amber Brown from Pittsburgh, Bernea Mayo from UMass, and Tara Day from DePaul. As well as Phoenix Gideon from Robert Morris. And so really, again, Joe Tartamella is a master at pulling together players from the transfer portal. UConn head coach Gino Auriemma pointed this out in a recent press conference when he went on one of his typical, rants about the transfer portal, just talked about how some coaches are adopting better than others. And Coach Tartamella is one of those coaches. And he always just puts together a really great team to watch. So be on the lookout for that, and particularly Drake and Archer.
Yeah, I don't always have a lot of time to watch the Big East, which is where your coverage helps me out so much. But I did enjoy watching St. John's. I watched them take on UConn. It was great for me watching Bernea Mayo play again, having covered her in the A10 for several seasons. What does that mean for St. John's that, they are able to consistently make the transfer portal era work for them?
I think it just means that they're consistently going to be an elite team. Last year they made it to the NCAA tournament, and that was kind of a totally different squad. This year they're really on track to make it far in the Big East, be one of the top, hopefully 4 teams in the conference. That's what they're aiming for, I think. And let's see, maybe they can get another at-large bid for the conference. I think it just means that St. John's is a place where recruits are going to want to go, especially those who are in the transfer portal. Like, what I can say is, watching them play at Madison Square Garden, I think you could see in everyone's eyes just how important of an opportunity that was, especially like St. John's was the home team at Madison Square Garden. That's an awesome opportunity. And I think, Coach Tartamella talks a lot about how just being in New York City, being in that environment, being around that program really is just a opportunity for student athletes to have an amazing experience while they're playing in college. So I think it's just it's going to continue to be an attractive place for players to go and for recruits to either enter through the transfer portal or from high school.
And, going back to Drake and Archer, how can they help the team continue to succeed as conference play really picks up and continues over the next 6 weeks heading into the Big East tournament?
Well, I think, Coach Joe said it best. It starts and ends with them. They are the team's leaders. And he kind of mentioned just looking them in the eye, making sure they're locked in. And he knows that they are kind of the floor generals. So if they can play at a consistent clip, I think it elevates the play of the whole team. And, when they're locked in and playing well, the other players on the team are also playing well. And we saw when they weren't, when they were kind of shut down by UConn in a pretty big loss recently, those two players weren't contributing as much. They were kind of shut down. Nika Buell played really lockdown defense on Archer. So I think, when they are showing up, when they're able to execute, UConn lost to St. John's last season. This is a team that is really strong and has the coaching staff and has the personnel to get things done. I think it starts and ends with Unique and Jill.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this off air on Saturday or Sunday when the game was played, and just how surprised we were at, UConn holding Unique Drake to just 4 points in 26 minutes. And I think, we'll talk about this a little bit next segment, but that goes to the resiliency of UConn and what they've been able to do. But, going into that, coming up next, we'll talk about UConn's continued injury woes, what it's meant for the team's freshmen, as well as all about the Big East road trip. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And here we are again, talking about UConn injuries. We've talked about this offline, on the podcast, in person. I feel like we're just always talking about this. Just to recap for the listeners, what's the latest on UConn's injury woes?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate update, but fifth year graduate student Aubrey Griffin, who has already missed a considerable amount of time in her UConn career, earlier this month, did go down with an ACL injury, and that means that now 4 players are out for the season, with guard AZ Fudd, 2 bigs, Ayanna Patterson and Jana El Alfi. And now Aubrey Griffin. And, to add to that, Caroline Ducharme, who has struggled with, neck spasms and has a history of concussions, is also out indefinitely for the team. I think, the UConn training staff has really worked hard to get her on the court. But at this point, when you have head injuries, you just can't mess around. You got to give people, time off. So we haven't seen her on the court in a while, and we're not sure if or when she'll return. But that really leaves UConn's rotation to about 7 players. And I mean, the impact is tremendous. I think that for UConn, I think the positive spin is that they've been dealing with this. This is their 3rd year now. So they're used to just personnel changing, bringing in new folks, and really kind of figuring out rotations. You got a elite coaching staff at UConn that has a system in place that can kind of just bring new players in and kind of, continue to win games. And UConn's on a really, hot streak right now. I think that the lineup that they're playing is, working for right now. But, I think it's just really unfortunate. And Gino kind of mentioned that it goes beyond basketball at this point. It's about student athletes' careers, and just, it's the 2nd time Aubrey Griffin's torn her ACL. She's already had a history of injuries. Same with AZ Fudd, and I think it speaks to a broader issue. We're seeing these types of injuries, season-ending injuries, across the country, and it speaks to a broader issue in the sport and a need for more research and kind of support for young women athletes who are navigating these injuries.
Yeah, and I agree with everything, especially someone who's dealt with concussions myself. Really hurts to see Caroline Ducharme struggling with neck spasms, and especially after all of her concussions over the years. But on the other side of the coin, something else we've talked about, the injuries have allowed UConn's freshmen to step up in ways they might not have been able to if some of these players had still been in the lineup. So how have those freshmen been able to contribute?
Yeah, I mean, their contributions have been tremendous, and they've been critical. And these players weren't necessarily expected to be starters. They stepped into starting roles when AZ Fudd went down, when Caroline Ducharme was sidelined. So they've just been really stepping into these roles and making UConn's offense super efficient. I think that, it should be noted that of all the freshmen of the week awards the conference has awarded, I think it's been 9 so far this season. 8 of them have gone to either KK Arnold or Ashlyn Shade, UConn's freshman guards. So, they are just consistently playing well and consistently getting recognition from the conference. This past week, Ashlyn Shade was the one who got the recognition. And, last week she had a really incredible stat line, 15 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals a game, and wins over Providence and St. John's. And she's shooting 57% from behind 3. So she's just really an elite shooter. She can just contribute, by both passing the ball and shooting the ball. And I think that the key to UConn's offense has been how they've been able to move the ball, the number of assists they're, putting up there, because everyone's contributing, and that 4-guard lineup seems to be working. KK Arnold, she's just a really incredible ball handler. She's got energy. She can disrupt teams on the defensive end. She's got 45 steals on the season. And really, she's just kind of one of the energizers of the team. Ever since I met her preseason, you just kind of see that she brings a really important dynamic to the team, keeps things light and fun on the court. And after all, this is a game. So, got to keep it fun, got to keep it light. So I'm just really impressed with both of them. I'm really loving watching KK in particular play, just because of the intangibles that she brings to the court, and how she's able to kind of elevate the energy of the team.
Yeah, and I didn't watch this game, but what stood out to me in terms of KK Arnold, 8 steals against Providence. Like, Eight steals is wild for anyone in college basketball, let alone a freshman.
Yep. So active hands, she's fast, and she's just always kind of playing with a lot of energy. And that's what, UConn coaching staff likes to see. And that's what's kind of continued to allow them to play at the level they're playing at.
Yeah, and excited to see what they do next. But onto something that's a little more lighthearted, something I got really excited about when you told me about it. What's the Big East road trip, and why should people check it out?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. It's a really kind of unique thing that the Big East is undertaking. And they have partnered with Playfly Sports to do a 13-stop mobile tour to every school in the conference. That basically is just like a pregame set of festivities and celebrations with those fan bases. So, they kind of go to each member school, the mascots are out, and, just kind of an opportunity for fans to engage for about 2 hours before game time. And the tour will actually culminate in stops at MSG for the men's tournament and Mohegan Sun for the women's tournament. So it's really just an opportunity for the conference to bring in a different element of, fan engagement that I think is really important. It's important for conference identity. It's important to acknowledge the, Big East basketball and all these fan bases that support it.
Yeah, and I know you wrote about this recently, but for those who haven't checked it out yet, and I say yet because, of course, you should be reading everything T puts out about the Big East. Why is it important for the growth of the Big East?
Well, when I spoke with, Big East Director of External Affairs, Nicole Early, who, is a great friend of the Next and of our pod, she spoke about just like the Big East being a proud basketball conference. And I think, in the world of conference realignment and things being kind of dictated by football, having a conference that really celebrates basketball as its roots and has a solid identity. I mean, the Big East has been through a couple different changes, right? It was reestablished in 2012 with, some teams that were there at the original, but some that weren't, and it's kind of reformed itself. But you have these regional rivalries that are just really important and that are meaningful to people here in the East Coast. And I think that it's important for the women's side too, because while, 6 of the 13 pop-ups happen before women's games, each pop-up, whether it's before a men's or a women's game, will feature women's basketball. So we saw recently at Creighton, the women's players were interviewed, same with Marquette. And it's just an opportunity to engage with fan bases and see women's players in different contexts. And I think exposure is really important because we get people to games that way.
And then which stop on the road trip excites you the most?
Well, because I live in Rhode Island, I'm looking forward to, when they stop at Providence, the Amica Mutual Pavilion, or the AMP. This is on February 13th, and it's before the men's game. The men are taking on St. John's, but again, the women's team will be featured. I expect to see head coach Erin Bath there, and I'm really excited about what she's building with the women's team. I think that she's brought in a lot of talent. She's kind of really developed a nice team culture here in Providence. So I'm looking forward to just seeing them be celebrated as part of that, and to kind of continue to grow exposure for the women's team in particular here in Providence.
And they picked up some non-conference wins, including one over Rhode Island that may have surprised a lot of people. So definitely excited to see what she's building there as well.
Yes, definitely. I was at that game at Providence, and the governor came out. It was kind of a nice local Rhode Island event. So it was a really close matchup, and Providence pulled it out in the end. But it was great to see that state rivalries continuing under Erin Bath.
Even in small states have rivalries too.
This is true.
Coming up next, we'll talk about what to watch for over the next month and a half of Big East play. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. I know I feel the pressure of the new year, new you thing, but this year I'm focusing on what I'm already doing really well at. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. I've been in therapy for a few months now, and it's been crucial to helping me learn new positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It's also helped empower me to be the best version of myself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and there is nothing better than sitting at home doing therapy while under your weighted blanket, in my experience. BetterHelp is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, and more. With the divisional round coming up this weekend, I'm eyeing some of FanDuel's divisional weekend specials, including at least 1 point being scored in each quarter of all 4 divisional weekend games, as well as Brock Purdy, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes combining for 6+ passing touchdowns, and more. FanDuel also has Oh My Field Goal specials, including if there will be a 55+ yard field goal scored in the divisional round, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So T, who do you think is going to have a breakout moment over the next 2 months?
So the person that I'm thinking in response to this question is Marquette senior Liza Carlin. She has kind of been a consistently strong player. She was a preseason selection for All Big East, but I'm really expecting her to kind of have a kind of breakout on the national scene and kind of get more recognition. She's averaging 17.5 points per game, over 7 rebounds a game. She dropped 30 points at Seton Hall the other day and just shooting super efficiently from the floor. She's a really talented player on a really talented team. And she's their leader. So I think, seeing her in Big East Conference play is really special, but I'm hoping that Marquette, who's ranked number 22 in the AP poll, continues to develop as a program. And I think they kind of go with Liza Carlin's leadership. And I think that not only do they have the opportunity to go far in the Big East Conference and kind of be towards the top of this conference, but I think if they advance to the postseason, it's as a player to keep an eye on and someone that I think is really talented in the national landscape as well.
So to you, what are some of the most exciting games left on the schedule?
Yeah, so some games that I'm looking forward to in particular are Marquette at Creighton at the end of this month. That'll be on January 31st. It's a rematch of an earlier game this season where Marquette defeated Creighton by 6 points, 76-70 at Marquette at Milwaukee. So this will be a rematch in Omaha, and I think Creighton's going to be looking for revenge. And right now, those two teams are head-to-head in the AP poll. Creighton is 21 and Marquette is 22. So really looking forward to that. And I think that that matchup is going to have some big implications for the end of the season poll and kind of ranking for the Big East tournament. The other one I'm looking forward to, this is another rematch that I think could be pretty good, is Villanova at Georgetown, February 13th. Earlier this month, our editor-in-chief, Howard Megdal, at the Next went to Villanova and saw them defeat Georgetown by just 2 points in overtime, 53-51. And I think it's an interesting storyline. Georgetown is a team that's emerging that I think are really going to make some noise in the conference. And Villanova's kind of been a standard top team in the conference, but are trying to figure out their identity without Maddie Siegrist. So I'm thinking that Georgetown is going to want to avenge that close overtime loss when they host Villanova in February.
And then I know you like to head over to Providence and watch, the Big East matchups there. So is there a team you're most excited to watch in person?
Yeah, well, actually today on Wednesday, the 17th, I'm hoping I can get over there. It's a little bit icy here in Providence, but I'm hoping to get to their gym, Alumni Hall, to catch Georgetown play. As I mentioned, they're kind of on the up and up this year. They're navigating a really tough situation as a program, as a team. As I've mentioned on the podcast, their head coach and Tennessee Vol legend Tasha Butts died earlier late last year, right before the season, and she was the head coach, and a huge loss for the women's basketball community. And the associate head coach Darnell Haney has stepped into that head coaching role. He's, I think, done it with grace. It's a hard situation, and I think he's been able to kind of lift the spirits of that program and build it in Tasha's vision. And I'm just really excited to see them play. I think he gets them prepared really well. He's the type of coach I'd want to play for as a student athlete. He's just kind of the kind of guy you want to run through a wall for. And I think the players are really respecting that. So I'm excited to see them play, and hopefully I can get over there today.
Looking forward to it. Hopefully the roads are nice and salted. Thank you for joining me today, T. Where can the people find you and your work?
Thanks for having me. So people can find me at TEE Baker, Baker. So @TBaker_WBB for women's basketball. And give me a follow, subscribe to the Next, and thanks for listening to the pod.
Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Make sure to tune in the rest of the week to hear from Howard, Jackie, and our WNBA draft group.